Welcome back to Stories with Dave. Thought this morning I'd break out another unpublished piece. I actually wrote a few years ago. If you're a writer and you're dogged about submissions, you noticed a number of patterns cover the submission pages around about 2020. One of those was a call for papers on COVID. I don't think there was maybe 5% of the magazines that I submitted to or whose submission page I viewed that year didn't include something asking specifically for COVID material. Of course, I knew what was going on. I saw through it, and it made me furious. The year the flu went away, right? Yeah. So, the other pattern I saw was a almost universal coverage of submission pages with a banner to the effect that we're soliciting work from the LGBT community and brown women and other marginalized or underrepresented groups. Someday I'd like somebody to define those terms for me for real. Someday that's going to happen. But in the meantime, like my mother used to say, my poor long dead mother, if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, write a story about them. So this is my contribution, folks, to the COVID discourse. I hope you enjoy it. Gather all the kids around. It's a joyful romp through the dynamics of American community in the time of plague. I'm no Camus, but bear with me. It's about 5,000 words. It's called Whirleygigs. It was the 5th week of the quarantine before Jack remembered it was time for the annual termite treatment. Like all the other repeating alarms on his internal to-do list, it had slipped into the mental melange of mid-pandemic personal disorganization. He stopped shaving after he'd run out of razors, and his hair, which he normally kept short and as carefully manicured as a putting green, grew wild and uneven now in places where he tried to cut it himself. It occurred to him, gazing into his teeth-brushing reflection in the bathroom mirror, that his hair had not grown so much as his face had shrunken. His eyes were receding, a little more every day, darkening around the edges. Even his chin, which he had thrust confidently into the narrative gravitas of 1,000 power meetings during that long, shiny course of his long, shiny career, seemed to have lost some of its prominence of late. It was, in point of fact, no longer entirely thrustworthy. I think I might be shrinking, he said. You really want me to answer that? His wife said. Beth, his wife, enshrouded the couch, enraptured by TV, all but oblivious to his presence beyond how it functioned as a holographic target for her derision. This happened frequently. She engaged in a daily dialogue with a vague concept of him, a hologram, not with his real person. In fact, Jack Coe may not have existed at all in actual physical presence for more than a decade now. He had become a house ghost, a hearth spirit of sorts, a living, breathing anachronism in charge of a laundry list of half-manly rituals. Since the quarantine, he'd almost become transparent, or so it would seem. Beth had a short list of snippets and phrases she kept at arm's reach to fire at him like macros on a call center response sheet. Do you really want me to answer that? That's nice. Is that right? Interesting. I'm not sure about that. Do you think that's a good idea? Did that make you feel like a real man? And have fun were her stock replies. They covered just about any topic and cross-applied to any context. I think I'll mow the yard, Jack said. Have fun, Beth said. Jack decided the final solution to the persistent dead feeling he had inside was to simply manhandle himself back into place. He would, by sheer force of will, using a claw hammer of carefully programmed consumerist dogma, uncrucify himself once and for all from the high, lonely cross of cold cognition. Everything would be all right then. He'd stop feeling so empty. It was just a matter of sorting the rhythms was all. Once he recaptured his outer rhythms, his inner ones would settle and mesh, or so he imagined. After he'd committed himself to that general goal, he'd become suddenly and terribly urgent to complete the annual spring yard preparation. First, he'd have to mow the lawn. He didn't mind mowing the lawn as much these days. It was good exercise to get outside. It was a good excuse to get outside. If he managed the workflow, he could stay outside all summer. Jack thought about staying outside all summer, mowing the endless lawn, and he smiled and strode happily out of the garage door into the sunlight to survey the yard and collect the little branches that had fallen in the recent thunderstorm. Ida, the sinewy old widow from next door, stood in her backyard clutching her wiry old poodle, Sam, chain-smoking, watching Jack pick up sticks. Sam the poodle was Ida's only docking point to the world of forms. He was the center of her universe, and the only evidence she had to prove that she lived somewhere other than in a dream. Jack checked in on the two of them now and then, just to be neighborly. Ida had a few children, but they all lived out of state. Sam the poodle was her only real family now. When Sam was not loose in her little yard, Ida gathered him up in her arms like an infant. Whenever they came close, or when the breeze crossed them just so, Jack could smell a strong combination of mothballs and flea dip, garnished now and then with a few drops of perfume that smelled like rose petals left to rot in a baggie. "It's sure a nice day to work in the yard," Ida said. "Oh, it sure is," Jack said. "I thought the last rainy patch might never end." "When it rains so much it makes our bursitis act up, doesn't it, Sam?" Ida said. Sam gazed up into her close-leaning face, craning his head toward hers like a baby bird stretching up to pluck a nice fat earthworm from between her lips. Ida puckered her lips for Sam to lick them. "Are you hanging in there okay?" Jack said, looking away. "I was thinking of heading out to the hardware store a little later in case you need anything." He went back to picking up twigs and branches. Ida stood by the fence with Sam clutched against her chest and a little bundle of frayed blanket, watching Jack work. "I can't think of anything," she said, "but if I do—" "Wait, yes, in fact, would you mind seeing if they have any of those whirlygigs? The ones you put in the garden to scare away birds? They look like aluminum flowers, and they spin when the wind blows." "Well, sure, I know the ones," Jack said. "I'd be happy to." Ida had a patio area with potted ferns at the corners and a nice set of outdoor patio furniture with a coffee table and a small canopy for shade. The rest of the yard was shaded by canopies of 2 giant cedar trees and a willow oak that grew between her house and the little woods that buffered the neighborhood from the distant parkway. "What, are you planning to do some gardening, or—" "Oh, my word, no," Ida said, flapping her hand at the very idea as if, once verbalized, it became a mosquito hovering through her field of vision. "There's a large bird nesting in the canopy of that oak tree," she said, pointing upward. "And I believe he means little Sam no good. I had him outside for a little while yesterday when it stopped raining so I could vacuum, and when I came to call him in, he was gone. I found him eventually, poor thing, hiding under the boxwoods. Then, about the time I bent to pick him up, the bird swooped right down on me, like to scare me to death. Swooped down and grabbed my hair a little even." "You're kidding." "I wouldn't kid nobody about nothing like that," she said. "He just sat on that low branch over yonder and glowered at me after that. I found him out here this morning, too. I reckoned he was looking for Sam. I thought maybe I could scare him with some of those whirlygigs, the way we used to in the garden back home whenever I was a girl." "I've got a shotgun," Jack said. He could feel his chest lift a little and hold. "It's an old rat gun," he said, "a 410, but it'll probably work if I'm close enough." It thrilled him to say 410. The gun was an antique that belonged to Jack's father's father, cherry wood furniture with inlaid brass scrollwork. Jack had never shot the gun before. He'd posed with it once in private in the full-length mirror that hung on the back of the bathroom door, and that thrilled him too. "I always keep fresh ammo handy, just in case." Ida's eyes grew wide with the proper measure of awe and respect. Her fingers rested gently to stroke Sam's dirty little head. She did it instinctively, as a touchstone against the looming menace invoked by the name of the gauge of the antique shotgun. Ida understood numbers, but she did not understand guns. "I don't think that would be necessary," she said. "I wouldn't want it to get hurt or anything. I just want to persuade it not to come into the yard." "Of course," Jack said. He gazed into the canopies of the trees that made the little suburban buffer zone for us that was left to absorb the noise and exhaust from the traffic on the parkway. In his mind, Jack was already hunting the bird in there, squirrels too, and raccoons. He wondered what the fine would be for hunting nuisance wildlife in suburbia with a rat gun. The neighborhood delinquents shot their BB guns back there all the time, and they never seemed to get in trouble. Jack could smell the first fecund hints of earth relaxing into spring, spilling trapped gas like an old man farting himself awake after a long midwinter's nap. The smell filled him with excited anticipation and with a sudden aching homesickness for places he'd never been. It made him feel young again, but in a way that was not altogether comfortable. Copper sunlight washed down the leaves on the trees overhead, high above them, appearing like a dark apparition against the cerulean blue of a cloudless sky. A big hawk with a broad wingspan circled, dropped a little, circled again, spreading its wings as if it meant to land on a branch somewhere just out of sight. Once he finished collecting the branches and twigs and arranging them in a little pile in a cardboard box on the porch, Jack mowed the lawn. The previous spring he had splurged on a nice new Scott's rotary blade push mower, the kind his grandfather once used. The sound of it whirring through the turf reminded him of those long ago summers, though that was something he kept to himself. Publicly, he had bought the mower and the cordless electric weed whacker to diminish his carbon footprint. That enabled him to say carbon footprint in public conversation. Jack loved jargon and the vocabulary du jour. Jack loved saying carbon footprint and sustainability. It wasn't until Jack had finished mowing and trimming the whole yard that he noticed the bird again, circling high above the cedar trees above the edge of the woods. Jack wondered if he could make a shot count at that distance. Probably not, he thought. He had never shot the old shotgun, but he knew that 410s weren't supposed to be very powerful. His grandfather had used his to kill rats at close range. Jack tilted his head back to watch the bird circling. It spiraled slowly, climbing higher, probably 100 feet over the tops of the cedars. Jack walked the yard slowly, back and forth, making sure he pulled up all the weeds that the canister blade couldn't cut. He made a mental note that he should take the blade to Pleasance to get it sharpened. His post-quarantine to-do list already stretched well into next year. Just thinking about it made him want to give up, walk away, climb in the car, and just drive. He did that very thing too, but he didn't get very far. In fact, he got only as far as the first item of that to-do list, Home Depot. When he got home an hour or so later, the bird sat waiting for him on the back of a wrought iron Parisian park chair his wife bought for show. Jack didn't even see the bird until it startled it into flight by slamming the car door. Ida was waiting for him too, and he didn't see her either until she spoke, startling him into his own sort of flight. "You see," she said. "Holy moly, you scared me," Jack said. "He flew down here as soon as I let Sam out," she said. "I'm sure sorry I scared you. You just don't like Sam for some reason." Sam stood trembling at Ida's ankle while Ida accepted the Whirleygigs from Jack in a bunch over the fence like a bouquet of flowers. "They had a bunch of different styles," he said. "I got a variety, and they're all pretty shiny." "Thank you, Jack. Those will do just fine. They're perfect," Ida said. She showed them to Sam for his approval. Sam growled a little and moved between her ankles while she putzed about the yard, placing the Whirlygigs in the turf and then changing her mind and moving them again. In the end, she moved them 4 times before settling with a simple borderline defense posture, with 1 Whirlygig posted at each corner of the fence and 2 at the patio corners. They spun like tiny golden windmills flashing in the sun, and Ida stood exactly in the middle of them and grinned, clutching Sam to her chest, said she reckoned that would do. She looked up at the sky, and because she did, Jack did too. There it was, circling high above. Jack felt as if he could feel it watching them, thinking about them. "He doesn't like them," Ida said. "You can tell." "How can you tell?" Jack said. "You just can. Can't you?" "I can. I can just feel him not liking him." "Well, at least Sam will be safe now." "Yes, I hope so. These neighbor children worry me sometimes. There's not much you can do about them, though." Jack knew the boys she was talking about. Since the quarantine started, the local kids had become ubiquitous, patrolling on their bikes at all hours of the day and night. They were a vaguely menacing presence in their sleeveless surplus store camo jackets with their BB guns and nunchucks dangling behind them on makeshift bandoliers. The youngest of them wore indelible Kool-Aid clown lips that darkened to a liver hue like garish birthmarks in the sun. They spoke to each other in total strangers with utter disdain, employing a vernacular that was 2 parts rap video and 1 part Valley Girl. Their words slurred together into one long utterance, fading in Doppler as they shot past on their bikes in single file. "What the fuck are you looking at, you motherfucker?" "How long have they been bothering you?" Jack asked. "No," Ida said. "Not more than usual." "Have they been bothering you?" Jack asked. "No," Ida said. "Not more than usual. But I reckon if they ever got bored of shooting at bottles and cans, old Sam might have something to worry about." "Well, not while we're here, Miss Ida," Jack said. He rested a hand awkwardly on her shoulder. She glared at him, and he withdrew his hand again just as awkwardly as he had extended it. "Excuse me. I'm sorry." Ida took 2 steps back from the fence and stood clutching old Sam in the middle of the yard with the aluminum whirlygigs whirling around her while Jack picked up the last of the sticks from the lawn. At length he went inside the garage to fetch his Scott's vintage design canister blade style low carbon imprint sustainable planet push mower. And Ida and Sam, reassured now by the promise of technology to secure their mornings and evenings from the whims of giant birds, went back inside to see whether there were anything worth watching on TV. When Jack reemerged from the garage, Ida and Sam were gone, replaced by the bird. It perched on the same low branch, leaning forward a little as if to make its focus clear, as if to say, "Looky here." It had mean, intense little eyes, made even more so by the light of the sunbeam in which it perched. Sam had never seen a bird that big from up close. The bird, for its part, had never seen a Jack that big from up close either. The bird seemed less impressed than Jack, however. He flew right at Jack's head, brushing his knuckles lightly across his forehead on the way by, almost casually. Tauntingly, as if to say, "Those might just as easily have been talons down, old boy," and then corkscrewed broadly up into the canopy of a willow oak, where Jack heard it call one high, piercing note and then fall silent. Jack stood staring up into the canopy, amazed a little, and a little angry. For some weird reason, the aggression evoked a specific memory of his big brother, holding him down when they were kids, making Jack smell his finger. His brother Doug would stick his finger all the way up his butt, all the way up to the second knuckle, and then chase Jack around with it for what seemed like hours and hours. Doug's other favorite game was to just hold him down, dangling loogies over his forehead and slurping them back up right at the last second. Micro-torture, he thought. They teach similar techniques at spook school. He'd read all about that, about using repetitive trauma to give the human brain a dual boot configuration, a sort of forced ego mitosis. Perhaps Big Brother had partitioned him with his little tortures, and now somehow Jack had inadvertently overheard the go signal that would activate his inner Manchurian candidate, the one whose primary directive is to kill big birds. That evening he found himself cradling the old 410 during American Idol. He traced its inlaid scrolling with his forefinger. He would need to clean it tomorrow, for sure. Stick that on the to-do list, the docket of daily rituals, the schedule of regular maintenance. After he cleaned the gun, he'd make sure to leave it loaded by the back door, where it could wait until it was time to figure prominently at the end of this comic little tragedy. He knew he could never hope to reach the canopy with it, but that low branch was well within range. Yes, sirree. It would be an instant kill. At that range, he couldn't miss. If that bird got it in his head to make Jack smell his butt finger again, why, Jack would be ready with a little butt finger of his own. "That bird swooped at me today," he said. "The one that's been messing with Ida and Sam. It was really aggressive, like evil. Like it was possessed or something." On the television screen, a doughy 17-year-old pigtailed mug of oatmeal from Michigan sang an excruciatingly up-tempo rendition of "You Light Up My Life." Beth gazed at her, fascinated. Jack gazed at Beth, fascinated. Outside, perched among the dark leaves along the end of a low-hanging branch of a tulip poplar with its chest glowing ever so faintly in the LEDs from the TV inside, the hawk perched perfectly still, gazing through the window at Beth and Jack, fascinated. Is that right? Yep. I'm going to kill it if it tries it again, too. That's interesting. Hey, I'm going to leave this 410 over here behind the umbrella stand, okay? Just don't touch it. It's fully loaded 410. You're fully loaded, she said. Are you sure that's a good idea? Trust me. Just leave it alone. It'll be fine. I know what I'm doing. Famous last words, she said. She watched him with vague interest during commercials. It made her nervous whenever Jack's testosterone thermometer exceeded his pay grade. Beth's husband was not a gun guy. Beth's husband was not even a sports guy or a whiskey and cigar guy. She wasn't really sure what kind of guy he was. Life's little trade-offs. I'm not even going to shoot it unless I get a really good shot, Jack said. I'm not an idiot. Are you sure about that? Beth grinned up at him from the couch. That's not a protected species or something, is it? She had a point. No, it isn't, Jack said. At least I don't think it is. I haven't checked, to be honest, but they'll put you in jail if you kill it, she said. Especially now with everybody on edge like this. Everybody acting weird and uptight. What if you hit one of those kids? Though declared in multiple interrogatives, she had a point. That made 2 points total. He had to think fast, deflect with humor. If I hit one of those kids, he said, the world will be minus one semi-retarded meth head rapist in 10 years. He had a point, but he lost it. So dark, she said. Just drop it, he said. But he knew better. She never dropped anything. The smart thing to do, she said, would be to get the kids to shoot the bird. Bird dead, kids go to reform school, or hoods in the woods, whatever. 2 birds, 1 stone, and your hands are clean. She had a point. Since the quarantine began, Saturdays in the neighborhood felt a lot more like the ones Jack remembered from his own childhood. There was less vibration in the world. The sky was clear and intensely blue. On this particular Saturday, walking outside felt like walking into a postcard painted by Norman Rockwell. Not the way it looked, but the way it felt. Families drifted lazily down the lanes on their bicycles and roller skates. Joggers and dog walkers waved to him as they passed. Some of them even wished him a good morning. On a morning like this, you could walk less than a quarter mile and meet 20 neighbors whose names you'd never known before, people you'd lived down the street from for years. Jack walked out into the yard, stretched his arms to the sky, and tilted his head back and breathed in the clear, bright morning. High above him, a dozen leaves snapped in succession through the canopy. The sound moved through the sunlit green like the sound of a zipper unlocking or a playing card wedged in a spinning bicycle spoke. Thrip. Was followed by another thrip, and then another, louder one that sounded like it snapped a branch. He heard the branch fall slowly through layers of canopy, and then somewhere close but out of sight, a stone made a dull thump on a patch of moss. It was only then that Jack remembered having spoken to the boys earlier that morning. He'd stopped during his walk to scold them for chasing a neighbor's cat, and had suggested that they hunt something more difficult to shoot. He mentioned the big bird nesting above his and Ida's yard, but he'd never expected them to take him up on the offer. If you bring me the corpse of that bird, he told them, that could be worth something, say $20 probably. The boys were getting closer. He could hear their voices getting closer through the little woods. I think I hit it, yelled one. I definitely did. I think I did too, came a second voice. I could see its feathers puff out through the scope. You must not have hit him good then if he's still flying. He's not going nowhere. You think he'd have the brains to get. They don't have brains, dumbass. That's why they call your mom a bird brain, because she's stupid. Suddenly, the boys appeared at the tree line in the distance, awash in sunlight, their heads craned back, scanning the tops of the trees. Two of them had what sounded like air rifles. A third had a wrist rocket. One of them raised his air rifle and fired, and the bird lifted off again and climbed high above and vanished for a moment behind the willow oak's canopy. It reappeared and lit on a branch on the tulip poplar, and so it went. on, the boys chasing the bird from below, shooting at it wildly, and the bird alternately swooping them and then climbing to circle high above in relative safety or to light on a branch. "Look, that's its nest, up there, look it!" The boy with the wrist rocket stood pointing up into the sun-dappled kaleidoscope of tree limbs, about 10 feet up from that dead branch. "See?" They saw. The boys commenced their barrage. The bird swooped on them again, and one of the boys tried to shoot it in midair, but misfired, shooting a clean round hole through Ida's plate glass window, causing her to emerge in a furious burst of hysterical cursing and demands to know the names of their fathers. The boys redoubled their rate of fire now, even once Ida came out and started screaming at them to stop, with Sam running back and forth between the Whirleygigs, barking at them crazily. Twig by twig, they dismantled that nest. They stood below, cheeks flushed, grinning to each other, shouting, "Nice shot, and keep going, we've almost got it." Bits of the nest tumbled down the tree branches to the ground below, and then, after what seemed like an hour of concerted effort, a large section of it fell to earth in one catastrophic heap of leaves and branches. Jack had been watching the whole thing in a kind of daze from the yard, fascinated, until Ida and Sam both appeared by the fence, hysterical. "That's enough of that now, boys," he hollered, walking toward the fence line beneath the trees. "That's enough. I think that's good for today. I think you did the job. You won. Here." Jack paid them the $20 bill. The boy with the wrist rocket, his hand shot out with like a viper and snatched it from his fingers, and they all turned to leave without a word. Before they reached the edge of the yard, the kid who took the money said, "Hey, mister, I don't think it's dead yet, for reals. It's still up there hiding against the branch next to where the rest of the nest is." His companions chuckled. He grinned. "And? Well, do you want us to come back tomorrow? Finish the job?" "No," Jack said. He said it through eyes that were far away now. "No, I'll deal with it. I have a 410. After the boys left, the bird had tried to become small against the trunk of the tree close to where the nest had been. It didn't move. Jack stood for a long time looking up through the branches in the breezy twilight, watching its form take the shape of a small burrow in the crotch of a tree branch high overhead. Once or twice he thought he saw it move a wing, but he couldn't be sure. He estimated he might be able to hit it with the 410, if he could wait for a break in the wind. It would be worth a try, he thought. At length he walked over beneath the oak where the wounded bird perched high against its lofty branch, and he searched along the ground for the remains of the nest. He found a clump of branches that the bird had woven expertly together, so tightly thatched that it survived the fall in one piece. And then he found the 2 eggs that he supposed had been whole and then shattered in the fall when the nest came down. One of those contained the fetus of a dead bird. "That's why you wouldn't leave," he said to the dead baby bird. His own voice registered to him now as the voice of a distant stranger. "Well, that ended well," Beth said to him, snapped at him from the couch over a forkful of pasta salad when he came back inside to clean up for dinner. He didn't even want dinner. Everything now was automatic, and the world seemed to move in stop-action photography. Jack had felt her watching ever since Ida's hysterical performance out in the yard. She had seen and heard the whole fiasco. "I can't believe you actually took me seriously about asking those kids to do that," she said. Then, after a contemplative pause, "Do you feel like a man now?" Jack stared at her, through her, from across the room. For a moment he felt a sense of pity for her, for both of them, so heavy and profound that he thought it might break his heart and pull him right through the floor at his feet. She looked so home in the world, and yet so estranged from it. Jack grinned and shook his head slowly for what felt like a long time before he simply said, "No." Across her backyard, Ida watched from her living room window as her neighbor Jack's silhouette opened his garage door and quietly walked into the side yard beneath the old willow oak with his grandfather's inlaid 410, cradled awkwardly at his hip. Ida managed to cover Sam's ears just in the nick of time. Afterwards, she stood frozen in place, clutching his head tightly to her chest, staring into the silent darkness under the old willow oak, waiting for Jack to reappear against the light of the garage door. Eventually, his wife came out. It had been an instant kill. At that range, he couldn't miss. And Thanks for joining me for Whirleygigs. See you next time for something even more juicy.